Korean Mafia boss shunned for years, until one black club stripper changed everything. The knife stopped 3 inches from Dong-hyun's throat. He felt the blade's cold edge kiss his skin as he shoved Zuri sideways into the dressing room lockers. The Black Lotus security alarm screamed, red emergency lights strobing through the backstage corridor. The attacker lunged again, professional, silent, wearing a maintenance uniform that didn't belong to any of Dong-hyun's people. Dong-hyun caught the man's wrist mid-strike, twisted hard. The attacker's bones snapped with a wet crack, but he didn't scream. Trained. The kind you don't hire on street corners. Out. Now. Dong-hyun grabbed Zuri's arm, pulling her toward the emergency exit. She didn't ask questions. She ran. Behind them, automatic gunfire erupted in the main club. Glass exploding. Bodies screaming. This wasn't a robbery, it was a purge. Someone was erasing witnesses, and Zuri was at the top of the list. They burst through the exit into Seoul's rain-slicked alley just as the second wave hit. Black SUVs blocked both ends, headlights pinning them like prey. Dong-hyun counted 6 men stepping out, weapons drawn. No police sirens. No backup coming. The river, Zuri said, her voice steady despite the blood on her costume. Through the market. Dong-hyun looked at her sharply. She shouldn't know about the river routes. Only his inner circle knew those. Who are you really? He demanded as they ran. Someone they want dead more than you. They vaulted over vendor carts, scattering fish and ice across cobblestones. Bullets chewed through wooden stalls behind them. The Han River glittered ahead, polluted, freezing, and their only option. Dong-hyun's car was supposed to be waiting at the east dock, driver armed and ready. They reached the dock. The driver was face down in the water, blood blooming black in the current. Shit, Zuri breathed. They knew. Dong-hyun's mind raced through options. His phone buzzed. A message from his lieutenant. Boss, building surrounded. Everyone's down. Get out. Everyone. His men. His territory. Gone in 15 minutes. Can you swim? Dong-hyun asked. Zuri met his eyes. In December? In the Han River? Are you insane? It's that, or they make it look like we never existed. The voices behind them switched from Korean to English to something Eastern European. Multiple syndicates. Coordinated. This wasn't just about Zuri. Someone was collapsing the Black Lotus entirely. 3 seconds, Dong-hyun said, gripping her hand. Deep breath. Stay under until you reach the bridge supports. Zuri nodded once. No fear in her eyes. Only calculation. They jumped. The river hit like frozen knives, stealing breath, crushing lungs. Dong-hyun's expensive suit became a lead weight, dragging him down. Next to him, Zuri kicked hard, her dancer's strength cutting through the current. They surfaced under the bridge just as bullets pinged off concrete pylons above. Dong-hyun pulled them deeper into the shadows, both gasping, teeth already chattering. The cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was deadly. Hypothermia would claim them before bullets did. Under, he rasped. Luading dok. 200 meters. They dove again, swimming blind through garbage and chemical runoff. Dong-hyun's vision tunneled. His limbs turned sluggish. But Zuri's hand found his, pulled him forward. They surfaced at an abandoned loading platform beneath the expressway. A concrete cave where homeless camps once stood, now empty. Dong-hyun dragged them both onto the platform, lungs burning, body violently shaking. Above, he heard vehicles, searchlights sweeping the water. Your phone, Zuri whispered through chattering teeth. Dong-hyun pulled it out. Screen black, dead. Zuri checked her small bag, somehow still strapped to her body. Empty. The burner phone she'd carried was gone, lost to the river. They were cut off, alone. Every safe house compromised. Every ally potentially turned. Dong-hyun found a rusted maintenance shed at the back of the platform. Inside, old tarp, discarded worker uniforms, a broken space heater. He pulled Zuri inside, shut the door. Strip, he said flatly. Everything wet comes off or we die of exposure. In the darkness, they changed without speaking. The rustle of wet fabric. Violent shivers. the hyper-awareness of another person breathing inches away. Dong-hyun wrapped them both in the tarp, their bodies pressed together for warmth. Professional distance evaporated in survival. "Your men," Zuri said quietly. "The ones who died tonight knew the risks." Dong-hyun's voice was hollow. "But they didn't know about you. Didn't know we were all bait for something bigger." Zuri shifted closer, her forehead against his shoulder.
I'm sorry.
This was supposed to be contained. Nothing's contained anymore. Dong-hyun stared into the blackness. "Someone just erased 6 years of my life in one night. And you're going to tell me why?" Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of search helicopters. Finally, Zuri spoke. "Because I'm not just a stripper. I'm evidence. And you just became the last person who can keep me alive long enough to testify." Dong-hyun closed his eyes. Of course, the rumors, the isolation, the years of enforced loneliness. Zuri's exhale was slow, measured, the kind of breath someone takes before confessing to murder. "Busan. 5 years ago." Her voice barely rose above the sound of helicopters circling overhead. "Korean African syndicate running girls between Lagos and Seoul. I was product.
Cargo.
They moved me through 3 countries in 6 weeks. Dong-hyun said nothing. Let her talk. I learned fast. Names, routes, bank accounts, who paid who, where the real money moved." She shifted against him, her body still trembling. "When I escaped, I took ledgers with me. Digital copies. Everything. And you've been hiding in Seoul's club scene ever since?" Dong-hyun's tone was flat. "Dancing at the Black Lotus? Hiding in plain sight. Nobody looks twice at strippers. We're furniture." Her laugh was bitter. "Until someone recognized me 3 weeks ago." The helicopters grew louder. Searchlights swept across the water, closer now. "We need to move," Dong-hyun said. "They'll check every pier, every tunnel." "How much did you tell them?" "About me? Nothing. I didn't." Zuri stopped. "Wait, you think I set this up?" "Someone fed them my movements, my safe house locations, my driver's schedule." Dong-hyun pulled away from her, eyes adjusting to the darkness enough to see her face. "You show up at my club 2 months ago. Tonight, my entire operation gets torched. So yes, I'm asking." Zuri met his stare. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. I've had 2 months. Fair point. Then who? The same people who want those ledgers back." She stood, wobbling slightly, still weak from the cold. "And the same people who've been paying someone inside your organization to keep you isolated, to make sure you stayed vulnerable." Dong-hyun felt ice in his chest that had nothing to do with the river. "What? The rumors about you, the women who left, the whispers that kept everyone at arm's length." Zuri's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "That wasn't organic. Someone's been engineering your loneliness for years." The maintenance shed door rattled. Voices outside, Korean, then Russian. Dong-hyun grabbed Zuri's wrist, pressed his finger to his lips. They flattened against the back wall as flashlight beams cut through the cracks in the door. The voices argued briefly, then moved on. 30 seconds of silence. "Service tunnels," Dong-hyun whispered. "Behind this platform. They connect to the subway maintenance system. We can move underground to Gangnam. They'll be watching the subway, not the abandoned sections, the ones scheduled for demolition." He found a rusted crowbar near the heater, tested its weight. Not a gun, but it would break bone. They slipped out through the back of the shed. The service tunnel entrance was a concrete mouth swallowing into deeper darkness. Dong-hyun led them inside, their footsteps echoing off wet walls. The tunnel stretched endlessly. Emergency lights flickered every 50 meters, casting everything in sickly yellow. Water dripped from pipes overhead. Somewhere distant, machinery hummed. "Dong-hyun." Zuri's hand found his shoulder. "When we surface, they'll be waiting. They always are. They have people everywhere. Police, government, your people." "I know." He kept walking. "Which is why we're not surfacing in Seoul." "Then where?" "Incheon. Port District. I have one contact there who doesn't report to anyone. He paused. If he's still alive. A sound ahead. Movement. Dong-hyun pushed Zuri behind him, raised the crowbar. A figure emerged from the shadows. Ragged clothes, wild hair. Homeless. The man took one look at Dong-hyun's expression and fled deeper into the tunnels. How long have you known? Zuri asked as they continued. About being manipulated? I didn't. Not until tonight. Dong-hyun's jaw tightened. But it makes sense. Every relationship I tried to build fell apart. Every woman who got close suddenly had reasons to leave. I thought I was the problem. You weren't.
No.
I was the target. He stopped walking, turned to face her. So here's what I need to know. Are those ledgers worth dying for? Because that's where this ends if we keep running together. Zuri stepped closer. In the dim light, her eyes were harder than he'd seen before. Not a dancer anymore. Something sharper. Those ledgers can dismantle 3 syndicates across 2 continents. They can free hundreds of trafficked women. They can take down politicians, judges, police commissioners. She paused. And yes, they're worth dying for. Then we'll need more than a crowbar. They emerged from the tunnels at a maintenance access point near Incheon port, the air thick with salt and diesel. Dawn was breaking, gray and cold. Dong-hyun's contact lived above a repair shop 3 blocks from the water. They moved through empty streets, staying in shadows. Zuri walked like someone trained for urban evasion, light steps, eyes constantly scanning. The repair shop's lights were off. The door was ajar. Dong-hyun's stomach dropped. Inside, his contact sat bound to a chair, throat cut so recently the blood was still warm. The room had been searched, torn apart. Professional work.
On the wall, written in his contact's blood. 죽은 자는 말하지 않는다.
The dead don't talk. Zuri touched Dong-hyun's arm. We need to leave. Now. They knew we'd come here. They know everything. Her voice was steady despite the horror. They're not hunting us. They're hurting us. Toward what? The only choice they'll let us make. Zuri moved to the window, peered out. Surrender or disappear completely. Dong-hyun stared at his dead friend. 6 years of loyalty. Gone in a message. There's a third option, he said quietly. What's that? We burn their entire world down first. Zuri turned to face him. For the first time since the club, she smiled, cold, dangerous. Real. Now you're talking. They heard sirens. Police. Coming fast. Back door, Dong-hyun said. Move. They ran into the alley just as squad cars screeched to a stop out front. Up the fire escape. Across rooftops. Through a gap between buildings that scraped skin from Dong-hyun's shoulders. They dropped into a market alley, disappeared into the early morning crowd. Behind them, police radios crackled. Ahead, somewhere in the maze of Incheon's port district, temporary safety. Maybe. Zuri grabbed his hand as they walked, heads down. Anonymous. One more thing you should know, she said quietly. What? The syndicate hunting us? They don't miss twice. The safe house sat where the Han River bent toward industrial wasteland. A concrete box with broken windows and walls still blackened from a fire 3 years prior. Dong-hyun's men had used it for interrogations once. Then it became a place to forget. Now it was sanctuary. They entered through a side door hanging from one hinge. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and old blood. Dong-hyun's remaining lieutenants had secured the perimeter. 2 men, both looking hollowed out, both aware they'd lost everything in a single night. Boss. The older one, Min-jae, approached cautiously. We swept the area. No tals. But. Say it. We're it. Everyone else is dead or arrested. The Black Lotus is gone. Dong-hyun nodded once. Keep watch. No one gets within 2 blocks. Min-jae glanced at Zuri, questions in his eyes, but knew better than to ask. He left. The main room had a table, 2 chairs, and a first aid kit someone had left behind. Dong-hyun poured whiskey into plastic cups while Zuri peeled off the borrowed work jacket, revealing the gash across her shoulder. Shallow but angry. Sit, Dong-hyun said. She obeyed without argument. He opened the kit, found antiseptic and gauze. When he pressed the soaked cloth to her wound, she didn't flinch, didn't make a sound. "You've done this before," he observed. "Which part? Getting stabbed or patching myself up?" "Both." Zuri's smile was thin. "I told you, I'm a survivor." Dong-hyun worked in silence, wrapping the gauze with practiced efficiency. Clothes like this, he noticed things. The faint scars on her wrists that makeup usually covered. The way she held herself rigid, never fully relaxed. The calculated awareness in her eyes even now. "Busan," he said. "Tell me the rest." Zuri exhaled slowly. "I was 19, art student in Lagos. Got recruited for what I thought was a modeling contract in Seoul. By the time I realized it wasn't modeling, I was already in transit." Her voice remained steady, clinical. "They moved us through Istanbul, then Beijing, then Busan. Different ports, different handlers. Always moving so we couldn't establish patterns or contacts." "How many girls?" "In my group, 8. By the time we reached Seoul, there were 4. She stared at the table. "The others didn't make the journey." Dong-hyun set the gauze aside, poured more whiskey. "Neither of them drank." The syndicate Korean African operation, like I said, they specialized in cross-continental trafficking. Untraceable routes. Political connections on 3 continents. Zuri finally met his eyes. "I worked in their clubs for 6 months. Learned fast. Learned who ran what. Learned where the money moved and who protected them." "And the ledgers you took?" "Bank accounts. Shell corporations. Names of every police captain, judge, and politician on their payroll from Lagos to Seoul. Shipping manifests, routes, safe houses." She leaned back. "Everything to dismantle the entire operation." "Why didn't you go to authorities?" Zuri laughed, cold, humorless. "Half the names in those ledgers are authorities. I tried once. Detective in Busan. 2 days later, my handler knew everything I'd said. The detective disappeared." She paused. "I learned to trust no one. Yet you're here. With me. You're different." Zuri studied him. "You've been isolated. Deliberately kept away from connections that could compromise you. That makes you either very dangerous or very clean. I'm betting on clean." Dong-hyun stood, paced to the broken window. Dawn light filtered through, gray and lifeless. "The rumors about me. The women who left. You said that was engineered. Someone wanted you alone. Vulnerable. Easy to control or eliminate when necessary." Zuri joined him at the window. "I've been watching you for 2 months. Every woman who got close to you suddenly had reasons to leave. Too many coincidences. Who benefits from my isolation? Anyone who wants the Black Lotus weakened but not destroyed. Someone playing a longer game." She turned to face him. "The same people who'll use tonight's massacre to absorb your territory. Clean takeover with you as the scapegoat." Dong-hyun felt the walls closing in. 6 years. 6 years of enforced loneliness weaponized against him. "You know what protecting you means?" he asked quietly. "Full-scale war. Not just with the trafficking syndicate. With whoever's been manipulating me. With the authorities they own. With rival organizations who'll see me as weakened prey. I know. My empire is already bleeding. By tomorrow, I'll be a ghost story." He looked at her. "Walking away is the smart play. Disappear. Start over somewhere they'll never find me. And leave me to die. You survived before. You'll survive again." Zuri stepped closer. "You don't believe that." "I don't know what I believe anymore." "Then let me make it simple." Her voice was soft but unyielding. "Those ledgers can free hundreds of women still trapped in that system. Can destroy the people who've been using you as a puppet. Can give you back something real instead of the illusion of power they let you keep. At what cost? Everything." She didn't look away. "But you've already lost everything tonight. The only question is whether you lose it running or fighting." Dong-hyun was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the river flowed past like time itself. Indifferent, relentless. "Why me?" he asked. "You could have contacted journalists, international authorities, Interpol. Because you're the only person in Seoul's underworld with enough reach to move fast and enough isolation to still have integrity. Zuri's hand brushed his arm. And because you're scared of the same thing I am. What's that? Being alone forever. The words hit harder than the gunfire had. Dong-hyun stared at this woman, this stranger who saw through 6 years of carefully constructed walls in 2 months. You're not afraid of me, he said. Not a question. I'm afraid of what happens if we both keep running from connection. Zuri's eyes didn't waver. I've survived trafficking, torture, and exile. You've survived isolation, manipulation, and betrayal. We're both still here, still breathing, still capable of choosing something real. This isn't real. This is survival. It's both. Min-jae's voice crackled through a walkie-talkie on the table. Boss. Movement. 2 blocks east. Could be scouts. Dong-hyun grabbed the radio. Fall back to secondary positions. No engagement unless necessary. He turned back to Zuri. Decision time. Walk away. Disappear. Let the syndicates tear each other apart while he rebuilt somewhere anonymous, powerless, but alive. Or war. Real war. The kind that ended with bodies or tribunals. The kind that meant choosing vulnerability over survival. Choosing her over safety. Dong-hyun picked up the whiskey, drained both cups in 2 swallows. Call your contacts, he said quietly. Everyone who might still have those ledgers backed up. Everyone who wants those syndicates dead. Zuri's eyes widened slightly. You're sure?
No.
He met her gaze. But I'm done being scared of the wrong things. She nodded once, reached for her phone, then remembered it was dead. We'll need secure channels, encryption, time. She thought for a moment. And weapons. Lots of weapons. I know where to start. Dong-hyun moved toward the door, then stopped. Zuri, if this goes wrong, it won't. If it does, they'll make examples of us. Public. Brutal. She smiled genuinely this time. Then we'd better not lose. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Closer than before. The war had already begun. The call came at 6:47 a.m. Min-jae's voice cracked through the burner phone. Boss, Financial Crimes Unit just hit the Gangnam office. Warrants. Federal warrants. Dong-hyun felt his chest tighten. On what grounds? Money laundering. Human trafficking. Racketeering. Min-jae paused. They have documentation. Real documentation. Account numbers. Transaction histories. Names. How much do they have? Everything. The phone went dead. Dong-hyun stood motionless in the safe house doorway, watching dawn bleed across the Han River. Behind him, Zuri moved closer, silent but present. How bad? She asked. They didn't just raid one location. They went federal. His voice was hollow. Someone gave them a complete audit trail. His second phone buzzed. Text message from a contact in the prosecutor's office. Asset seizures authorized. 7 properties. 12 accounts. You have maybe 3 hours before they issue the arrest warrant. Then another message from a lieutenant in Busan. Boss, they hit us too. Everyone's scattering. Sorry. Then another. Police raided the warehouse. Found the guns. I'm going underground. The messages kept coming. Each one a death certificate for a different piece of his empire. It's not a raid, Dong-hyun said quietly. It's a dismantling. Surgical. Coordinated. Zuri moved to the table, pulled up a chair. Sit down. I don't. Sit. Down. He obeyed, legs suddenly weak. This wasn't random, Zuri said, her tone analytical. Federal raids require months of preparation. Evidence gathering. Legal frameworks. Someone's been building this case while keeping you distracted. The attack on the club was theater. Dong-hyun's hands clenched. The real hit was always going to be legal. Clean. No bloodshed. No martyrs. Just erasure. Who knew your complete financial structure? 3 people. My accountant. My second in command. Dong-hyun looked up. And my cousin. Where's your cousin now? The question hung in the air like poison. Dong-hyun pulled out his phone. Dialed. Straight to voicemail. He tried the second in command. Same. The accountant didn't even ring. Number disconnected. They're gone, he said flatly. All of them. Min-jae entered through the side door, face ashen. Boss, I just got word. Park Jin-ho cut a deal with prosecutors 3 months ago. He's been feeding them information in exchange for immunity. Park Jin-ho, Dong-hyun's second-in-command for 4 years. The man who'd sat at his table, drank his whiskey, called him brother. 3 months, Dong-hyun repeated. That's when Zuri started working at the club. Zuri's expression shifted. Wait, you think I'm connected to?
No.
Dong-hyun stood, paced. I think they used you. Your presence gave them cover. Made it look like the collapse was about you, about protecting a witness, about trafficking. But it was never about you. Then what was it about? Territory. Power vacuum. Min-jae leaned against the wall. Someone wanted the Black Lotus dismantled legally so they could absorb everything without war.
No rival gangs.
No police attention. Just a clean transfer. Dong-hyun felt the architecture of his betrayal crystallizing. Park Jin-ho feeds authorities just enough to destroy me, but not enough to expose the broader network. I disappear. My territory gets carved up by whoever promised him protection. Who benefits most? Zuri asked. The Jade Circle. Min-jae's voice was bitter. They've been circling for years, waiting for weakness. Dong-hyun's phone buzzed again. This time, a video message. He opened it. Park Jin-ho's face filled the screen. Clean suit, expensive watch, standing in what looked like a hotel suite.
Dong-hyun.
I want you to understand this isn't personal. You were always going to fall. I just decided when and how. He smiled. Your isolation made this easy. No one to warn you. No one you trusted enough to see it coming. The rumors about you, I started those. The women who left, paid them. Every piece of your loneliness was an investment. The video cut to footage of federal agents raiding Dong-hyun's properties. Then to news broadcasts announcing the takedown of a major criminal organization. Park Jin-ho's voice continued over the images. By noon, you'll be the most wanted man in Seoul. By tomorrow, you'll be forgotten. The Jade Circle thanks you for your service. The video ended. Dong-hyun set the phone down carefully, hands shaking with rage he couldn't release. 4 years, he said quietly. I trusted him for 4 years. He weaponized your isolation, Zuri said. Turned your loneliness into blindness. Min-jae's radio crackled. Boss? Unmarked cars approaching from the west. At least 6 vehicles. We need to move now. Dong-hyun looked around the safe house. The rotting walls, the bloodstains, the empty whiskey bottles. His empire reduced to this. 1 room, 2 loyal men, and a woman who'd accidentally exposed how hollow his power had always been. The offshore accounts, Min-jae said urgently. The ones only you have access to. Frozen. I checked an hour ago. Dong-hyun grabbed the go bag someone had prepared. Everything I built is gone. Property, money, connections. All of it. Then what do we do? Dong-hyun looked at Zuri. She sat calmly, watching him with those steady eyes that had seen worse than this, survived worse than this. On day 14, Dong-hyun woke before dawn. Habit from years of running an empire that operated in darkness. He made coffee, stood at the window watching fishing boats disappear into fog. Behind him, Zuri's door opened. She emerged in an oversized shirt and shorts, hair tied back, face puffy from sleep. Human. Real. Not the calculated dancer or the sharp-eyed survivor. Just a woman waking up in a place she didn't trust yet. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Never can. She moved to the kitchenette, poured her own coffee. They stood in separate corners of the small space like boxers waiting for a bell that wouldn't ring. I'm going to the market later, Zuri said. We need actual food. I'll go. You shouldn't be seen. Neither should you. I'm not on television. You're still being hunted. Zuri set her mug down harder than necessary. Dong-hyun, I've been hunted for 5 years. I know how to buy vegetables without getting killed. He said nothing. You can't stay inside forever, she continued softer now. You'll lose your mind. Maybe I already have. On day 17, Zuri enrolled in a correspondence course for physical therapy. The packages arrived weekly: textbooks, anatomy charts, practice materials. She spread them across the small kitchen table, studying with the same intensity she'd once used to memorize syndicate ledgers. Dong-hyun found work with a local logistics company. Low-level. Moving shipments of fish and produce between coastal towns. The manager didn't ask about his past, just handed him a route and a truck. It was honest work. Felt like wearing someone else's skin. He came home smelling of seawater and diesel, shoulders tight from lifting crates. Zuri would have dinner ready, nothing elaborate, just whatever she'd managed from the limited market. They ate together, conversation minimal. How was the route? She'd ask. Fine. The manager treating you okay? Yeah. Silence. After dinner, Dong-hyun would shower. Long showers. Hot enough to turn his skin red. Then he'd change in the bathroom, emerge fully clothed, retreat to the couch. Zuri watched this pattern for 3 weeks before saying anything. On day 23, she broke. Why do you do that? Dong-hyun looked up from his phone, checking news he'd already read twice. Do what? Change in the bathroom. Sleep in your clothes. Never take your shirt off even when it's hot. Zuri sat in the armchair across from him. You're living like you're in a prison cell.
I'm comfortable.
You're hiding.
I'm respecting boundaries.
Whose boundaries? I never asked you to. She stopped, recalibrated. Dong-hyun, we've been living together for almost a month. I've seen you covered in river water and blood. I felt your heartbeat when we were hiding from killers. But you won't take your shirt off in your own living room. It's not about you. Then what's it about? He looked away. Drop it.
No.
Zuri leaned forward. You asked me to trust you with my life. I did. But you won't trust me with whatever you're so terrified of showing. I'm not terrified. You're petrified. Her voice was gentle but unyielding. Every time I get within 3 feet of you, you find a reason to move. Every time I touch your arm, you flinch. You treat closeness like a threat. Maybe it is. To who? Dong-hyun set his phone down, rubbed his face. Zuri, let it go. I can't. She moved to sit beside him on the couch. Not touching, but close enough he could feel her presence. Because whatever this is, it's the same thing that destroyed you in Seoul. The same reason Park Jin-ho could isolate you for years. The same fear that made you think you were broken. I am broken. Says who? Says every woman who's ever. He stopped. Ever what? The silence stretched. Outside, waves crashed against rocks. Seagulls screamed. They all left, Dong-hyun said finally, voice barely above a whisper. Every single one. Some lasted weeks. Some lasted months. But they all left eventually. Why? He laughed, bitter, hollow. You want the list? I kept one for a while. Tried to find patterns. Reasons I could fix. He counted on his fingers. Too cold. Too demanding. Too distant. Not affectionate enough. Not present enough. Not enough. Zuri waited. But the real reason? Dong-hyun met her eyes. I'm not good at this. Physical intimacy. I freeze up. I don't respond the way people expect. The way they need. Respond to what? Touch. Desire. All of it. His jaw tightened. I'm not wired right. Something's missing. And they all figured it out eventually. Did you love any of them? The question caught him off guard. I thought I did. Maybe. I don't know. Did any of them love you? They said they did. That's not what I asked. Dong-hyun slumped back against the couch. Probably not. How could they? I couldn't give them what they wanted. Zuri was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if what they wanted was the problem, not you? What if they wanted power by association? Status? The thrill of being with a mafia boss? She turned to face him fully. What if none of them actually wanted you, just what you represented? Some of them were genuine. Were they? Or did they leave the moment they realized you weren't the fantasy they'd built in their heads? Dong-hyun had no answer. Zuri reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and rested her hand on his forearm. He didn't pull away, but his muscles tensed. "I'm not scared of you," she said quietly. "I'm not disappointed. I'm not waiting for you to be someone you're not. You don't understand. Then help me understand." Her grip tightened slightly. "Tell me what you think is so terrible that 6 years of isolation was preferable to risking it again." He looked at her hand on his arm. Such a simple thing. Such an impossible thing. "If I tell you," he said slowly, "if I explain all of it, you'll see me differently." "Good. I want to see you. The real you. Not the ghost you've been pretending to be. And when you realize I can't be what you need, what do you think I need?" Dong-hyun finally met her eyes. "Someone whole. I need someone honest." Zuri didn't look away. "Someone who won't run. Someone who'll rebuild something real with me even when it's hard. Even when it's uncomfortable." She paused. "Can you do that?" The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of the sea. Dong-hyun exhaled slowly. "I can try. Then start by telling me the truth. All of it. Why women really left. What you're really afraid of." He closed his eyes. Opened them. "Okay," he said quietly. "But not here. Let's walk." Zuri nodded, stood, offered her hand. After a long moment, Dong-hyun took it. They walked out into the gray morning, toward the cliffs where the sea met the sky, toward a conversation 6 years overdue. The cliffs overlooked water the color of old steel. Dong-hyun and Zuri walked in silence until the town disappeared behind them, until there was nothing but wind and waves and the kind of emptiness that demanded honesty. Dong-hyun stopped at the edge, hands in his pockets, staring at the horizon. "Her name was Ji-won," he said. 8 years ago, before the Black Lotus became what it was. I thought," he exhaled, "I thought she was different." Zuri stood beside him, close but not crowding, listening. "We were together 6 months. She was patient at first. Said it didn't matter that I was slow to warm up, that intimacy could be built." His jaw tightened. "But it did matter. Every time she initiated, I'd freeze. My body wouldn't cooperate. My mind would go somewhere else, analytical, detached. Like I was watching from outside myself." The wind picked up, carrying salt spray. "She tried everything. Talked to me about it. Asked what I needed. What would help." Dong-hyun's voice grew quieter. "I didn't have answers. I just knew something was wrong with me, that I couldn't feel what I was supposed to feel, couldn't respond how people expected." "What happened?" Zuri asked gently. "She left. Told me she loved me but couldn't live with someone who treated physical connection like a business transaction. Said it felt like being with a mannequin." He laughed bitterly. "That's the word she used. Mannequin." Zuri winced but said nothing. "After her, I tried with someone else. Then another. Same pattern. Some lasted longer than others, but they all eventually realized I couldn't give them what they needed. Passion. Spontaneity. Desire that wasn't calculated." Dong-hyun finally looked at Zuri. "I can perform the mechanics. I understand the theory. But the feeling? The connection people talk about? It's like everyone got a manual I never received." "Did you want to feel it?" Zuri asked. "Or did you want it?" The question stopped him. I don't know. Both? Neither." He ran a hand through his hair. "I knew it mattered to them. I knew my inability was hurting them. So I tried. God, I tried. Read books. Talk to doctors. Convinced myself it was just stress or trauma or something fixable. And nothing.
No trauma.
No medical issue. Just me. Wired differently." He turned back to the sea. "The worst part wasn't the leaving. It was the pity. The way they'd look at me like I was broken. Like I was missing some essential piece of humanity. Is that what you think? That you're missing something? Aren't I?" His voice cracked. "Everyone else seems to navigate this effortlessly. Desire, intimacy, physical connection, it's supposed to be natural, instinctive. But for me, he searched for words. It's like everyone's speaking a language I can only translate, never speak fluently. Zuri was quiet for a long moment, watching waves crash against rocks below. After I escaped the syndicate, she said finally, I couldn't be touched for 2 years, not sexually at all. Someone would brush my shoulder and I'd flinch. A handshake felt like assault. I slept in corners so nothing could come up behind me. Dong-hyun looked at her. The club was exposure therapy in a way. Touch that I controlled. Distance I could maintain. But even then, she shook her head. Even then, intimacy terrified me. Still does sometimes. Not because I don't desire it, but because desire feels like losing control. Like giving someone ammunition. It's not the same thing, Dong-hyun said quietly.
No.
But it's also not that different. Zuri turned to face him fully. You think you're broken because you don't feel desire the way other people do. I think I'm broken because I feel it through a filter of survival instinct and trauma. Neither of us trusts our bodies to do what we need them to do. At least you have a reason. Trauma makes sense. But me? I've never been hurt that way. Never had a reason to shut down. I'm just defective. Or different. Zuri stepped closer. Dong-hyun, do you feel anything for me? The question hung between them like a held breath. I don't know, he admitted. I feel something. Protective. Connected. Like I want you safe. Want you happy. But is that desire? Attraction? Or just partnership? Does it need a label? Everyone else seems to know the difference. Everyone else isn't living our lives. Zuri reached for his hand again. This time, he let her take it without tension. What if the problem isn't that you don't feel enough? What if it's that you feel differently? That your intimacy builds slowly, through trust and time, instead of spontaneously through physical attraction? That's just another way of saying I'm broken.
No.
It's saying you're not built for the kind of shallow, immediate connection most people mistake for intimacy. Her thumb traced circles on his palm. Those women who left, they wanted the idea of you, the powerful boss, the dangerous man, the fantasy. When they realized you needed time, patience, actual emotional connection before physical, they couldn't handle it. Because that requires work. Requires them to be vulnerable too. Dong-hyun stared at their joined hands. You're trying to reframe this. I'm trying to tell you that nothing about you scares me. Zuri squeezed his hand. You think you're difficult? I'm a trafficking survivor who can't sleep through the night without checking exits. Who still flinches at sudden movements. Who treats every kindness like a trap. She smiled sadly. We're both catastrophically damaged. The difference is, I'm not waiting for you to be fixed. I'm waiting for you to be honest. I am being honest. Then be honest about what you actually want. Not what you think you should want. What you actually want. Dong-hyun looked at her. Really looked. The scar above her eyebrow from whatever fight she'd survived before he met her. The way she stood with weight on her back foot, always ready to run. The steadiness in her eyes that came from surviving things that should have destroyed her. I want. He stopped, started again. I want someone who doesn't expect me to be something I'm not. Who won't measure me against some invisible standard I can't meet. Who'll let me build toward intimacy instead of demanding it immediately. Okay. That's what we do. Zuri pulled him slightly closer. No expectations. No timeline. No measuring you against anyone else's experience. We figure out what intimacy means for us, not what it's supposed to mean. And when you realize it's not enough, then we'll deal with it then. But you don't get to decide for me what I need. You don't get to leave before I've even had the chance to choose to stay. Dong-hyun felt something crack in his chest. 6 years of armor splitting just slightly. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. Neither do I. Zuri stepped close enough that he could feel her warmth. But I survived trafficking by learning new languages in war zones. You survived isolation by building an empire from nothing. We're both capable of learning. Learning what? Each other. Slowly, without judgment, without expectation. She looked up at him. Can you try that? The wind howled around them. The sea churned below. Everything felt fragile and impossible. Yes, Dong-hyun said finally. I can try. Zuri smiled, real, vulnerable, human. Then that's where we start. She didn't kiss him, didn't pull him into some dramatic embrace. She just stood there, hand in his, letting the moment exist without forcing it into something it wasn't ready to be. We learn, she said quietly. Together. Dong-hyun nodded. For the first time in 6 years, the silence between them didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like possibility. The envelope arrived on day 37. No postmark. No return address. Just a plain manila envelope slipped under their apartment door sometime between midnight and dawn. Dong-hyun found it when he left for work. He stood in the doorway, staring at it like an unexploded bomb. What is it? Zuri emerged from the bedroom, still in sleep clothes. He picked it up carefully, opened it. Inside, a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed Zuri at the market 3 days ago buying fish. The angle suggested a telephoto lens. Professional surveillance. The note was brief. We know where you are. We've known for 2 weeks. This doesn't have to end badly. Meet us. Alone. Details to follow. The Jade Circle. Dong-hyun handed it to Zuri without a word. She read it, face unchanging. They're going to offer a deal. How do you know? Because if they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. She set the note on the counter. They want something. The second message came that afternoon via burner phone. A number Dong-hyun hadn't given anyone. They'd somehow acquired it anyway. Text message. Pier 7. Midnight. Bring the woman. Come alone. Dong-hyun didn't tell Zuri he was going until she caught him loading the gun he'd bought off a fisherman 2 weeks prior. No, she said from the doorway. It's not your decision. Like hell it isn't. This is about me. This is about ending it. Dong-hyun checked the magazine, racked the slide. One way or another. Dong-hyun. They know where we are. They've known for weeks. They're waiting for something, and I need to know what. He met her eyes. Stay here. Lock the door. If I'm not back by dawn, use the emergency money and disappear. I'm not letting you. This isn't a negotiation. Zuri grabbed his arm. Then neither is this. If you go alone, I'm following you. You'll be walking into a trap with me as an uncontrolled variable behind you. Or we go together, controlled, prepared. They stared at each other. Together, Dong-hyun said finally. But you stay back. You stay hidden until I know what they want. Agreed. Pier 7 was abandoned. Rotted wood and rusted equipment stretching into darkness over black water. A single SUV waited at the far end, headlights off, engine idling. Dong-hyun approached with Zuri 20 meters behind, concealed behind a shipping container. His hand rested on the gun tucked into his jacket. 3 men stepped out of the SUV. The one in the center was older, expensive suit, face Dong-hyun recognized from surveillance photos. Han Jae-sung, head of the Jade Circle. Dong-hyun. Han's voice carried across the pier. Thank you for coming. Say what you came to say. Direct. I appreciate that. Han walked forward slowly, hands visible. We have a proposition. Simple. Clean. Everyone walks away.
I'm listening.
The woman. Han gestured vaguely toward where Zuri hid. She's carrying information that threatens several organizations. Not just the trafficking syndicate, the Jade Circle has financial entanglements with them. Shared interests. Get to the point. Give her to us. We ensure the ledgers are destroyed. She disappears quietly. And you receive new identity, new country, $5 million to restart.
Han smiled.
You get your freedom. We get our security. She gets what she gets. Which is? Does it matter? Han's smile didn't falter. She's a stripper. A trafficking victim. No family, no connections. No one will look for her. You, on the other hand, you can rebuild. Become someone real. Someone legitimate. Dong-hyun felt the gun's weight against his ribs. How long have you been planning this? He asked quietly. Since Park Jin-ho first approached us about dismantling the Black Lotus. 18 months? Give or take. Han spread his hands. You were always the endgame, but we needed you isolated first. Weakened. Desperate enough to take a deal. The rumors. The women who left. All of it. Every piece designed to make you doubt yourself. To make you alone.
Han stepped closer.
And it worked. You're here. Powerless. Abandoned by your organization. Wanted by federal authorities. You have nothing except one woman who brought you nothing but destruction. She saved my life. She ruined it. Han's voice hardened. Give her to us. Take the deal. Live. Behind the shipping container, Dong-hyun knew Zuri was listening. Knew she was probably calculating whether running would save him. Knew she'd never forgive herself for being the reason he lost everything. But she wasn't the reason. They were. Dong-hyun pulled out his phone. Not the burner, his old phone. The one he'd kept powered off for weeks. What are you doing? Han asked. Ending this. Dong-hyun powered it on, pulled up encrypted files. Everything he'd compiled over 6 years. Names, routes, financial records, political connections. Everything the Black Lotus had ever touched. Everyone they'd ever paid. I've got something better than Zuri's ledgers. Han's expression shifted. That's suicide. You implicate us, you implicate yourself. I know. Dong-hyun's finger hovered over send. A message queued to journalists, federal prosecutors, Interpol. But here's what you don't understand. I don't care anymore. I'm not the Black Lotus. I'm not a king. I'm just a man who's tired of being used. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Maybe. Or maybe I disappear before they find me. Either way, your empire burns. He looked at Han. So here's my offer, you leave. Tonight. Forever. You forget Zuri exists. Forget I exist. And I sit on this information until the day I die. And if we refuse, then I send it. Right now. Every law enforcement agency across 3 continents gets your entire network within 60 seconds. Dong-hyun's thumb moved closer to the button. The Jade Circle dies in a week. Your politicians, your judges, your bank accounts, gone. Federal raids. International investigations. Prison or execution, depending on the country. Han's face had gone pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Dong-hyun showed him the screen, real files, real recipients, real consequences. I spent 6 years building the Black Lotus. I know exactly how to destroy organizations like yours. And I've got nothing left to lose. The silence stretched. Water lapped against peer supports. You destroy yourself to save a stripper? Han asked incredulously. I'd destroy myself to choose something real over power. Dong-hyun glanced toward where Zuri hid. For 6 years, you made me think I was broken, that I deserved isolation. But you were the infection. All of you. And I'm done being sick. Han studied him for a long moment, then laughed short, humorless. You really are insane. Probably. Dong-hyun's finger stayed on the button. Clock's ticking. Walk away or burn. Han gestured to his men. They retreated to the SUV. This isn't over, Han called back. Yes, Dong-hyun said quietly. It is. He pressed send. Not to law enforcement. To Park Jin-ho's personal email, the internal files, the evidence of the Jade Circle's manipulation, the proof of their conspiracy. Enough to destroy Park's immunity deal. Enough to make him talk to save himself. The SUV's tires squealed as they fled. Zuri emerged from hiding, ran to him. What did you do? Burned the bridge. Dong-hyun showed her the sent message. Park Jin-ho betrayed me for immunity. Now he's got evidence that makes him complicit with the Jade Circle. He'll trade them to save himself. Federal prosecutors will have everything within hours. And us? We disappear. Tonight, before it all unravels. Zuri grabbed his face, kissed him, quick, fierce, desperate. You just destroyed everything for me.
No.
Dong-hyun pulled her close. I destroyed it for us. They ran. By morning, Park Jin-ho was in federal custody, singing about the Jade Circle. By afternoon, raids hit simultaneously in Seoul, Busan, and Tokyo. By evening, the news showed arrests across 3 countries. The Black Lotus was officially dead. The Jade Circle was dying. And somewhere in a country whose name they'd never speak aloud, Dong-hyun and Zuri watched the sunset from a balcony where no one knew their names. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Losing everything?" Dong-hyun thought for a long time. "No," he said finally. "I regret how long I spent building the wrong things." She leaned into him. "We'll build better ones. Together," he agreed. And for the first time in his life, Dong-hyun believed the future was something worth living for. The alarm went off at 6:15 a.m. Dong-hyun silenced it, stared at the ceiling of their small apartment, and counted the cracks in the plaster. 14. Same as yesterday. Same as the day before. In the other room, he heard Zuri stirring, water running, the coffee maker sputtering to life. He rose, dressed in clothes that smelled of warehouse dust and diesel fuel. No tailored suits. No silk ties. Just jeans and a work shirt with his fake name stitched above the pocket. David Kim. Nobody asked if it was real. "Morning," Zuri said when he emerged. She was already dressed for her shift at the physical therapy clinic. Scrubs, hair pulled back, the scar on her shoulder visible when she reached for mugs. "Morning." He accepted the coffee, black, still too hot. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence. Toast, eggs, the radio playing news from a country they'd never return to. Seoul had faded into background noise. Occasionally, they caught updates. The Jade Circle's remaining leadership arrested in Singapore. Park Jin-ho sentenced to 18 years. The Black Lotus officially listed as a defunct organization in international crime databases. Dong-hyun was mentioned sometimes. Still at large. Believed to be deceased. He was neither. He was just a logistics coordinator who managed shipping routes for a mid-sized import company in a city where winter lasted 9 months and nobody looked twice at Asians who kept to themselves. "You working late tonight?" Zuri asked, rinsing her plate. "Until 7. Inventory shipment from Vancouver. I'll make dinner then. Around 8. Sounds good." She kissed his cheek. Routine now, comfortable, and left for work. Dong-hyun sat alone in the quiet apartment, coffee cooling in his hands. This was his life now. The warehouse was massive, cold, filled with the mechanical sounds of forklifts and conveyor belts. Dong-hyun's job was simple. Verify shipments, update databases, coordinate with drivers. Mindless work. Safe work. Work that required nothing of him except showing up. His supervisor was a woman named Margaret who smelled like cigarettes and treated everyone with equal indifference. She handed him the daily manifest without looking up. 17 pallets from Vancouver. Check the invoices against what actually arrived. Report discrepancies. Got it. He spent 8 hours counting boxes, scanning barcodes, noting damaged goods. Around him, other workers moved through their shifts with the same practiced numbness. Nobody talked about their past. Nobody asked questions. At lunch, he sat alone in the break room, eating sandwiches Zuri had packed. The TV on the wall played daytime news, politics, weather, celebrity gossip. Nothing that mattered. A coworker named Steve sat across from him. "Hey David, you catch the game last night?" Dong-hyun had no idea what game. "Missed it. Working late. Brutal." "Well, it was a blowout anyway." Steve talked about statistics Dong-hyun didn't understand, players he'd never heard of, stakes that meant nothing. He nodded in appropriate places. Steve left satisfied. Dong-hyun finished his sandwich alone. Zuri came home at 6, exhausted but lighter than she'd been in months. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes. "How was clinic?" Dong-hyun asked from the kitchen, chopping vegetables for stir-fry. "Good. Tiring. I worked with a stroke patient today, 73 years old, relearning how to walk." She leaned against the counter, watching him cook. "It's slow. Frustrating for him. But he's making progress." "That's good. He reminded me of you, actually." Dong-hyun looked up. "How?" "Patient. methodical, willing to do the work even when it's uncomfortable. She smiled. He asked me today if it gets easier. I told him yes, but different. Not back to how it was before. Just new normal. What did he say? He said that's enough. They ate dinner on their small balcony despite the cold. Below, the city hummed with evening traffic. Above, stars struggled through light pollution. I got my final exam results back, Zuri said. Passed. Top of my class. Dong-hyun set down his fork. Zuri, that's incredible. It's just coursework. I still need clinical hours before certification. It's not just anything. He reached across the small table, found her hand. 5 months ago, you were running for your life. Now you're top of your class. She squeezed his fingers. 5 months ago, you ran an empire. Now you count boxes in a warehouse. Yeah. Do you hate it? Dong-hyun thought about that. The alarm at 6:15. The mindless work. The co-workers who knew nothing about him. The absence of power, influence, fear. Sometimes, he admitted, sometimes I'm in that warehouse and I think, I used to control territory worth millions. I had men who'd die for me. I could change outcomes with a phone call. He paused. Now I argue with Margaret about damaged shipments and whether we need to reorder packing tape. And it feels like I'm being erased. Like I'm wearing someone else's life. Zuri nodded slowly. I feel that too. Some days at the clinic, I catch myself in the mirror and don't recognize who's looking back. This version of me, the student, the healer, she's so far from who I was that it's like being haunted by your own future. Do you regret it? Dong-hyun asked. Leaving? Running?
No.
But I grieve what we lost. The parts of ourselves we had to amputate to survive. She looked at him directly. Don't you? Every day. They sat in silence, the weight of ordinary life pressing down like gravity. I had a panic attack yesterday, Zuri said quietly. At work. The patient grabbed my wrist too hard during an exercise and I just froze. Couldn't breathe. Had to excuse myself to the bathroom. Did you tell anyone?
No.
What would I say? Sorry, I was trafficked and sometimes touch feels like violence? She laughed without humor. I just splashed water on my face and went back to work. Zuri, I'm fine. I managed it. She met his eyes. But it reminded me that we're not healed. We're just functioning. There's a difference. Dong-hyun understood. He functioned too. Woke up, worked, came home. But underneath, the instincts remained. Scanning rooms for exits, noting who watched too long, sleeping light enough to wake at any sound. Maybe functioning is enough, he said. For now. Is it though? Zuri pulled her hand back, wrapped her arms around herself. We survived. We're safe. We're building something. But are we actually living? What do you mean? I mean, when's the last time you laughed? Really laughed? Not just polite chuckling at coworkers' jokes. She leaned forward. When's the last time you felt excited about tomorrow? When's the last time you wanted something beyond just not dying? Dong-hyun had no answer. We're so focused on surviving that we forgot what we're surviving for. Zuri continued. We wake up, go through motions, come home. Repeat. We're safe, but we're not alive. What do you want to do differently? I don't know. Something. Anything. She stood, paced the small balcony. I want to travel. Learn languages. Try terrible restaurants and laugh about it. I want to dance again. Not for money, not for survival, just because bodies are meant to move. She turned to him. I want to feel something other than relief that we made it through another day. Dong-hyun watched her. This woman who'd survived trafficking, escape, and war, now trapped in a different kind of cage. Safety. We can do that, he said slowly. Travel. Try new things. Build toward something instead of just away from danger. Can we though? We're still hiding. Still using fake names. Still looking over our shoulders. Less than before. But still. Zuri sat back down, deflated. I don't want to be ungrateful. This life, ordinary, boring, safe. It's more than I thought I'd ever have. But it's not enough. Is that terrible?
No.
Dong-hyun reached for her hand again. It's human. They sat together as the city darkened around them. Somewhere below, people laughed, lived, existed without the weight of survival pressing on every choice. Do you miss it? Zuri asked finally, voice barely above a whisper. Power. Dong-hyun stared out at the anonymous city sprawling before them. Did he? Dong-hyun didn't answer immediately. The question hung between them like fog. Do you miss it? Power? He stared at the city lights bleeding into darkness, at the ordinary lives playing out in windows across the street. Families eating dinner, couples watching television, people existing without constantly calculating angles, leverage, threat assessments. I miss matching, he said finally. Zuri turned to look at him. When I ran the Black Lotus, every word I spoke changed outcomes. Every decision rippled through networks across continents. People feared me, respected me, needed me. His voice was quiet, almost hollow. I mattered. And now you're David Kim who counts boxes. Yeah. He laughed softly, bitterly.
I'm nobody.
Invisible. Replaceable. Margaret could fire me tomorrow and hire someone else by afternoon. The world wouldn't notice. I'd notice. That's not what I mean. I know what you mean. Zuri shifted closer, her shoulder touching his. You miss feeling significant, like your existence meant something beyond just taking up space. Is that shallow? It's human. She was quiet for a moment. I miss it too, being seen, not as property or product, but as someone. When I danced, even in that horrible club, I had power. Men wanted something I controlled. I mattered, even if it was for terrible reasons. She paused. Now I'm just another student in scrubs. Ordinary. You're not ordinary. Neither are you. But that's not how the world sees us anymore. They sat in the weight of that truth. Two people who'd once been forces, dangerous, significant, impossible to ignore, now reduced to background characters in a story that had moved on without them. What did you miss most? Zuri asked. About power. Specifically. Dong-hyun thought about that. Really thought. The certainty, he said finally. Knowing my place in the world. Knowing what I was supposed to do, who I was supposed to be. Power gave me definition. Without it, I'm just... He gestured vaguely at himself. This undefined, uncertain, lost. Yeah. Me too. Zuri pulled her knees to her chest. I thought escaping would feel like freedom. But freedom without direction just feels like floating.
No anchor.
No purpose. Just existing. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of distant rain. What if that's the point, though? Dong-hyun said slowly. What if we're supposed to be undefined? Free to become something that isn't dictated by survival or power or fear. That sounds nice in theory. Terrifying in practice. Everything about us is terrifying in practice. He turned to face her fully. We're two people with fake names in a foreign city, hiding from ghosts, trying to pretend normalcy is enough. That's objectively insane. Zuri smiled despite herself. When you put it that way. But here's what I realized today. In that warehouse, counting boxes, being nobody. He reached for her hand. I don't miss power. Not really. I miss feeling chosen. Chosen. Power made people stay. Fear kept them loyal. But nobody chose me. Not really. They chose what I represented. What I could do for them. What I could provide. His grip tightened. For 6 years, I thought I was unchosen because something was wrong with me. Because I was broken or defective. But it wasn't that. I was just surrounded by people who wanted my power. Not me. Zuri's eyes glistened in the dim light. And now, she whispered, now I have nothing. No power. No empire. No influence. I'm just a man who's bad at small talk and worse at being invisible. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. And you're still here. Of course I'm still here. But that's the thing, it's not of course. You could have disappeared months ago. Could have taken those ledgers and vanished. Built a life somewhere I'd never find you. You didn't need me after Soul fell. His voice cracked slightly. You chose to stay. Not because I could protect you or give you anything. Just because you chose me. Zuri shifted, straddled his lap so they were face to face, her hands framing his jaw. Dong-hyun, listen to me. Her voice was fierce, certain. I didn't stay because I had nowhere else to go. I didn't stay out of obligation or debt or fear. I stayed because when I look at you, I see someone who chose truth over power, who burned his entire world down rather than trade me for safety, who sits with me through panic attacks and nightmares and doesn't pretend it's easy. That's love. She cut him off. Maybe not the kind in movies, not dramatic or perfect, but real, built from survival and honesty and choosing each other when everything else was taken away. Dong-hyun stared at her. I still don't know how to be what you need. I don't need you to be anything except honest, present, willing to figure it out together. She leaned her forehead against his. You think you're hard to love because you don't feel desire the way people expect. But Dong-hyun, I don't want expected. I want real. And you're the realest thing I've ever had. Even when I freeze up. Even when I can't. Especially then. Because those moments, when you're vulnerable and uncertain and completely yourself. That's when I feel closest to you. Her thumbs traced his cheekbones. I don't need passion or spontaneity or whatever the hell romance novels promise. I need someone who won't run. Someone who'll sit with me in the hard parts. Someone who chooses me even when I'm difficult and damaged and impossible. You're not impossible. Neither are you. She kissed him softly. We're just us. Catastrophically damaged. Ordinary. Alive. Dong-hyun pulled her closer, buried his face in her shoulder. For the first time in months, maybe years, he let himself feel it. Not desire or passion, but something deeper, belonging. I choose you, he whispered against her skin. Not because I have to. Not because you saved me or I saved you. Just because, when I think about tomorrow, I want you in it. I choose you too. Zuri's arms tightened around him. Every day, even the boring ones, especially the boring ones. They stayed like that, wrapped together on a balcony in a city where nobody knew their names, where their pasts were fiction and their futures uncertain. So what do we do? Dong-hyun asked finally. About feeling lost? About missing significance? We build something new. Together. Zuri pulled back to look at him. Not an empire. Not power. Something real that can't be taken away. Like what? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. She smiled, genuine, hopeful. We're good at surviving. Maybe it's time to get good at living. That sounds terrifying. Everything worth doing is. She kissed him again, longer this time. But we don't have to figure it out tonight. We can just be here, together. Enough. Dong-hyun nodded, pulled her close again. Below them, the city continued its indifferent rhythm. Above them, stars appeared through thinning clouds. Around them, the world spun on without caring whether they mattered or not. But here, on this balcony, in this moment, they mattered to each other. And maybe that was enough. Zuri? Yeah. Thank you for choosing me. She laughed softly. Thank you for being worth choosing. For the first time in 6 years, maybe his entire life, Dong-hyun believed her. Not because she said it, but because he finally believed himself worthy of being chosen. They stayed wrapped together as night deepened around them. Two ordinary people with extraordinary scars, learning slowly what it meant to be loved not for what they could provide, but simply for who they were. Broken, healing, human, chosen. If you enjoyed the story this far, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next chapter and enjoy more story from us. And if this story gave you chills, drop a like and share it with someone who loves powerful romance with a dangerous edge. Your support keeps these stories coming. Thank you.